Hello, thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm coming at this from a business school perspective, specifically management and organizational behavior, and I teach leadership classes also. Uh, I got into this a few years ago when we started at my university a minor, and we wanted it to be multidisciplinary. So it was a competitive application process, but it's open to students in all majors. So we had a few business students every year, but also students from many other majors. I came mostly from a lecture and business case teaching background, but wanting to make it multidisciplinary, I wanted to choose a leadership domain where more leaders are needed and more effective leadership is needed. So I chose climate change and sustainability, which certainly fit. And question a few minutes ago about how the students reacted. By the way, what I'm offering is just a slide deck with lots of points, information, and including links to short articles, student friendly, instructor friendly. And of course, you're welcome to pick and choose from those things. And of course, contact me if you want to ask any questions or talk any further about any of it. Earlier question was about how students react. I dedicated about 2.5 75-minute classes to the topic. I was stunned at how into it they got, how stunned they were with what they learned. I really thought they'd all had a background in it in school, prior school, high school, and earlier undergraduate. And most had not. I kept hearing, well, people who took a climate science class or an earth science class, they had some familiarity. Everybody else was utterly ignorant about it. And they learned a heck of a lot. Real quick, I showed a frontline PBS frontline documentary called Climate of Doubt. And much of it was about climate denialism, and much of it was about politicians who resist anything that might, handle sea level rise or any other climate action. Anyway, they were stunned. I saw light bulbs going on. I had conversations after class all the time after that. And I look forward to this topic more than any other topic, I'd say. Briefly, yeah, leadership and social psychology, primarily in the domain of climate change, is my focused interest. I will add also that I chose climate change and sustainability because it is those action in those arenas fits squarely with my research interest, which is in org behavior. What does it mean to be proactive? And what are the deep meanings of being truly proactive? A major point being proactive is not a cliche, as in, this is due tomorrow. I wish I'd started a week ago instead of tonight. Genuine, deep productivity is profound because it's all about shaping the future. It's about thinking of where things are now and where they're headed and changing trajectory in order to create a better future than would exist if you weren't behaving proactively. And you pertains to individuals and teams and organizations and countries, etc. So it's a real proactive. There's a lot of things that are stacked against behaving proactively because it breaks molds, so to speak. So it's a pretty interesting arena, I think, pertinent to business organizations as well as the individuals. And I found it really interesting. Just to make a couple of psychology types of points. First off, in the climate arena, as you would intuit, the vast amount of attention to climate change, climate inaction, climate action has been hard sciences and technologies, and very little about psychology, human behavior, the human element broadly, including leadership in this arena. Very little about that until very recently, when psychology and related fields are starting to pay more attention, especially with eco-anxiety growing so much among younger people. I want to mention that most people do not ever talk about climate change. For one thing, being afraid of other people's reactions. And that was pretty legitimate for most of the time prior to now. Fortunately, things are changing. It should become easier to talk about because more in the US, I'm thinking more people understand it, what's happening, and more people are concerned and even alarmed about what's happening. So hesitation to bring up a conversation could start going away because the odds are people will be more receptive than they used to be just a few years ago. I want to mention a gateway belief that can initiate conversations that seems to be one of the first and best opening. I don't want to say gambits, but that's the word that's coming to mind to start a reasonable conversation. The gateway belief has to do with the percentage of scientists who know that climate change is happening and are concerned. Forever, the public perception has been that scientists are divided. The fact is that 98 to 99% of scientists are concerned and know that it's just been propaganda that creates the scientists are divided meme, if that's what it is. So that factoid can help kickstart a more genuine conversation. And now, more or less concluding, I mentioned on the summary sheet that topics like relevant topics, I mean, that can be worked into this climate arena broadly are decision-making, for instance, how people make decisions and how they depart from rationality. Cognitive biases are a big part of decision-making processes in this arena. Not the least of which is, of course, short-term consequences affect behavior more than long-term futures. Cognitions about long-term affect behavior. Anxiety, stress, job stress even, how to manage it becomes a topic, a little spin. There's all kinds of spin-off topics is part of my point here. And I want to mention leadership. It's a good arena for leadership. Partly because now students are interested in this topic. They want to know how they can make a difference. Leadership is where they can make a difference. It is certainly relevant to leadership in businesses. And the angles I mentioned about leadership, one has already been mentioned, which is a systems perspective, the importance, the utility of a systems perspective on leadership. And the other is I make a big point out of what you read in popular articles about leadership. Far more often than not, it's about personality traits that in titles they love to call superpowers. Empathy is a superpower. Well, empathy is terrific in a lot of ways. But I tell these students about leadership in terms of a better way to look at it is it's engaging other people to solve important problems and engaging other people to capture big opportunities. That's what leadership, bottom line, should be all about. So those are the kinds of things I talk about. Abby, I don't know if there's time to show. I would probably speak for a few words, flashing this one square cartoon, if you would. Some of you might remember Gary Larson, the great cartoonist who mostly does animals and anthropomorphizes with animals. Most of his cartoons have captions to them, often indicating what an animal is thinking as they are doing what he illustrates. I love this cartoon. In a way, it's like most of my jokes. Nobody laughs when they see this cartoon, but it takes a couple minutes. You have to see the key, which is down in the lower right-hand corner. All these fish are swimming upstream, business as usual. The fish in the lower right, can you see sticking out behind his trench coat? A little fish tail. That is a fish trying to find a creative, better way of doing things. This is what sustainability needs to be all about. Most people are doing what our species has been doing. We've got some creative individuals who are thinking in big terms about how to find better ways on behalf of a better future. These animals have to adapt. Thanks to this one, they might learn how to adapt. I just want to show that because I love this cartoon. Thanks for paying attention.
Great.
Thank
Yeah, so
you.
many important topics to be discussing in the business school context. Do we have any questions or reactions? Other people having had similar conversations with their students? Feel free to raise your hand or just unmute if you want to jump in. And yeah, as I mentioned in the chat as well, we will share Tom's slides which have many links and different kind of content that you could reuse in your teaching in the future. Oh, the name of the cartoonist.
Yeah, I appreciate a couple of compliments or thanks for the cartoon. I didn't hear any laughter, so I'm disappointed, but I do appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll put the name in the chat after, Fernando, as well. But John, you have a comment or question?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Tom. You mentioned 98 or 99% of the scientists, agree that this is a problem. And I just wonder whether I'd love to have a reference to that, in terms of surveys that have been done. How does one argue that point factually?
That's a real good, important question, and I'll have to look up. There are articles about this. I mean, empirical articles. It ranges from surveys to of all the manuscripts submitted to journals about climate change. Those who show some understanding of the science, those who accept the science, those who show concern, et cetera, what data sets show, whether or not an article is accepted, the population of submissions to data sets support or not support, et cetera. But there are academic articles about this, and if we follow up, I can easily find the exact references. That's a very good question.
Coming up in the chat as well. So thank you everyone for sharing those. And
Thanks,
Maya
John.
actually did upload the slides now as well. People want to take a sneak peek. Anyone else with a question or comment? Say out loud. Yeah, Eve.
Yeah, it's more a comment about the 97 or 98%. Just have to be careful between opinions of scientists and also what published articles say. So I just think that it's important to make the distinction. So that's
right.
all. Yeah,
and that made that a good question, and really it is in peer-reviewed journals. So the methods, they pay attention to multiple methods. Big point. Yeah.
Very helpful. Thanks. Okay, Yuri, last question, and then we will move to the next presentation.
There's a site up now. Excuse me, but good, very good. A reference up now. Thank you, Steve.
I want to just say on that topic of denialism that in the past 4 or 5 months, I've been doing sort of a laid back, not for publication social experiment where I engaged on social media networks on sort of communities that I usually don't engage with because are not actively pulled in by the social media algorithm, but we were able with my postdoc to overcome that barrier. And so I sort of infiltrated in a bubble of denialists and skeptics, and I observed for several months their conversations, and then I also injected my knowledge and my review of the scientific literature from on climate, and then so there will be an article that MBS will publish in a month or so, where we will report back on what we have learned in terms of the engagement style, the belief systems of this group of individuals, and an extensive review of the scientific literature on the different alternative explanations to climate and other related climatic effects. So stay tuned, and some of the references that have been exchanged in the chat are actually part of the literature resources that we refer to.
Very
Thanks.
cool.
Yeah, stay tuned for that.